This is my in-person talk after 2 years of gap. Okay, so my talk is about elevate your coding techniques for crafting clean and efficient code. In short, keep your code simple. So instead of having like 3, 4 lines, fancy things, I will be talking about keep your code simple, which is very, very important. Why? As I move along, I will show you, I will explain you the pain points as a point of reviewer, as a point of developer, why this is very, very important. But who I am? My name is Neha Sharma. To pay the bills, I work as a principal engineer at Oracle. To share my knowledge, I run a small community back in India. I'm from India. I'm an organizer there. To make my soul happy, which is very important for mental health, I do calligraphy. And to be acceptable by the world, I'm on Twitter where I do shit posting. But right now I'm on detox. So this is my handler. Folks who are not from India, if you will see the name of my spelling in my Twitter handle, hello Neha, it's double H. The reason is my name is the most common name in India, plus my surname is the most common surname in India. And I keep joking about it. If you will combine all the Neha Sharma in India, you will end up with a city there. So that's why I have a double H here. Now, this is my calligraphy work. So this is what I do. This makes me happy. And I am a very big, I will be using a bad word, I don't know. But okay, yeah, let me think about a good word. I'm a very fond of quotes, and whatever I get, I just start doing calligraphy. So just giving you a hint of my work. Now, whenever you are writing a code, it's bad, messy, whatever. It is working. So why should I care? My code is done, my PR is merged, it's running out there. Who the hell are you to tell me that my code should be rewritten or refactored? Every wrong, bad, messy code can function. It can produce the desired output. I would say that's the magic of code and developers who know this art. But if you wanted to be a good developer, you need to identify what is wrong, what is bad, what is messy. In fact, what is complex that you should be identifying. And that's the job of every developer. I'm not saying it's just a senior developer job, it's the job of everyone. Fancy code is not equal to best code. If you are on Twitter, you will keep seeing a lot of threads, a lot of screenshots where they claim this is the best shortcut and all that. But trust me, fancy code is not the best code. We will see the example. So, simple versus fancy. As we will move along, we will understand that what is the wrong, what you can improve. If I have to summarize, if you are writing a fancy, complex code, you will end up reducing the developer productivity. Maintenance issues would be there. There are so many issues I can point out, which I will keep doing it as I will show you the examples. And the most important thing, this is not one-time job. If you are thinking tomorrow, not tomorrow, tomorrow is Friday, so Monday you will go all pump up and you will be like, I'm gonna refactor everything and I'm done. No, it is a ongoing job you have to keep doing. Every time you are touching the code, you have to refactor. And it doesn't mean you don't, if you will not touch your code, you don't need to refactor. That's the thing. You have to do it if you want to maintain the project. So the first thing is, because this is a React specific talk, I have given this talk 2 or 3 times before, and that went for 40 minutes. So I have cut short and pick only React specific points here. So destructuring the props. If you have your React code, obviously you will be using props. The one of the common pattern is to just use props when you are defining the component. The problem here is when a code reviewer or a developer is picking that code, that he or she has to go inside and figure out which all props are we getting. So the best thing is when you are writing an efficient code to destruct your props in the signature. Now why? This will simplify. As a reviewer, in first shot, you will see that, okay, these are the props you are using. If they are not getting used, they will be highlighted. Simple thing, but trust me, it increases the readability of your code and help the fellow developers to understand what is happening in the component. Very basic thing, but I have seen that this is a pattern where few of the developers don't do it, but I would suggest if you will start doing it, it will help you. The next thing is single responsibility model. If you are coming from the solid principle of programming, then you might be aware of it. You should be making single responsibility model. As a React developer, we keep writing components, and sometimes we become so much into the code, we forget or we miss out that we are missing single responsibility model. One of the example is this. In this component, what is happening is we can easily break this into 3 different components. But why? Because then what you will be end up is a very clean component. You have different components, you can easily manage them, you can easily refactor them. And we have seen the talk before the break where we talked about the modular testing that you can do very easily here. And if you don't want any profile or button or nav, you can just remove it. You don't need to go through like this. So your scope of component is reduced. You are reusing your components also. You are maintaining your components also. You are doing a lot of things. Again, I have seen a lot of developers who actually take pride that their component line of component is 50, 100, more than that. And I always keep asking, can you refactor it? Can you break into multiple components so that it can be easily to maintain? The third is reusability. I just gave you an example of component, but when you are writing the React code, there are places where you can easily identify where you can move the code out of your components logic and move it to utils and helper. That will help in maintaining again your code. Also, reusability would be very, very high. Example, camel case to normal. This is a normal utility which you can just write once and your rest of the team can use. Most of the time we developers crib about consistency, that I have written this method, can you reuse and all that. The best is whenever you identify something like that, put it in utils or helpers and make sure that every developer is using. So consistency would be there, number of errors would be reduced, and you have one place where all the methods are there. And also if you are into a side projects, then you know that in future if you are going to use any of such method, you have one place to use it. And not just in React, also in CSS you can do it. I love CSS, but whenever I see code like this, I can't hold myself back and I'm like, oh, please, you have to refactor this. So it is very important that as much as our React JavaScript is important, similarly, CSS is also important because web is made of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So if you're loving JavaScript so much, please also take care of HTML and CSS. The next is state. We all can't live without state in React.js, backbone of our React.js. Since hooks came, there is no looking back. But the thing is that are we using the state carefully or not? Setting up state for everything, it's not great. It actually introduced the issue of maintenance. So always look back and see if you can merge the state or do you need the state. Example here, we are getting the data from a form for a user email and name. Instead of having 2 separate ones, you can merge them into one and create one object. Simple one, help you to maintain your code very much, help the reviewer to review the code very easily. Small things, but huge difference. Use Fragment. I come from India where we are not much into web accessibility or accessibility. So a few years back, I started with accessibility. When I was working with React before Fragment, this was my pain area. Why we are introducing div every time? I don't need a div. And thanks to React team for introducing Fragment. If you are working on React, you are writing JSX. But JSX at the end of the day is creating HTML. And for accessibility, it is very important you use the right tag. So it's very, very important. If you are just wrapping everything in div, I'm sorry, you are impacting accessibility. It is very important to understand. So please use Fragment. Where you doesn't know which tag to use, definitely you should know. But if you are not sure, if you don't need a div there, please go and use your Fragment tag. The example is, here we are trying to wrap a component. Before Fragment, if I will be using div, I will be end up with the div in the DOM, which is not a recommended way. So by using the Fragment, we will not be end up with the empty div. I don't know what's the right word, but extra div, yes, sorry. So this is how it would be then. The next is type checking. JavaScript doesn't have any type check. This is an advantage, but now most of the application we are building, they are very complex. I have seen by myself, I was anti TypeScript, but now I am TypeScript person. The reason is I have myself seen that how many bugs I was able to I was able to minimize because of the TypeScript. We developers, I will speak about myself. I used to say, oh, I'm writing this code. There won't be any issues. I know the requirements. I know everything. I have experience. That was my confidence. And when the errors used to come, I was like, okay, something got missed out. So please, if you can, I would say you should start using type checking. If you are not a TypeScript person right now, it's okay. At least start with prop types. At least start doing the basics one. You will see that it will create huge difference. Now, talking about clean code, it will help you at the end of the day, because what you are writing, like tomorrow is Friday, I don't want to be bugged by a defect coming to my way. So you will be very thankful for that. So few of the example I just take for the prop types on the top and TypeScript at the bottom. So please, if you are not into this, please try to start doing that. The next one is naming convention, which is, I think, everyone's best. Naming your variables, components is the one of the hardest thing. And I accept that. I also used to struggle. But as a reviewer, I started understanding that naming makes huge difference. There were so many times when the variable name, component name, class name were not making sense. And I was like, what this particular class is doing, what this particular component is doing, what this particular function is doing. It's very hard. And making your names, variables name or name, meaningful is very, very important. So I will give you an example. This is one of the code. It was sort cursor. So I was like, okay, it's sorting cursor, but what cursors are doing? I am not working on any such project. The second one was on click up arrow. Again, not clear what it is doing. So whenever I look at the code, I first try to see, are the naming convention making sense or not? So please try to make your names of variables, methods as near to what they are doing. It's very important. Now, it should be self-explanatory. Camel case or any specific pattern should be there. So if you are not sure which pattern to use, go back to your old code and see what is happening there, what pattern they are using. If it's a method or a function, it should be verb. If it's a variable, it should be noun. And please do not write names like Q, U, E. Is it a queue? Is it a query? I don't know what's happening. So please help everyone and help yourself also, because after 2 weeks, when you open back your code, you yourself will think, what is happening here? Fancy syntax. As I mentioned, every day you will see on social media that someone is coming with some beautiful shortcuts, fancy syntax and all. Trust me, it creates a lot of issues. Yes, you are very updated and everything, but when we work in a collaborative team environment, either you do the knowledge sharing or either you need to help the other developers what is happening. So if it's your own fancy syntax, I'm sorry, it is not gonna help because it is gonna impact the readability. Example, I'm not sure how this class name, what you are trying to do here. Can we please move it to some other function and do it correctly? If you are an anti-parenthesis or flower bracket person, I'm sorry, but my rest of the code is using curly brackets. So you also have to follow the same. So these are the things which every developer should be aware of and should be following. Architecture. One of the advantage and disadvantage of our React.js is there is no single pattern architecture like Angular providers. So every now and then people will come up with their patterns. So it's very important to understand few fundamentals. Whenever you are creating a React project, your architecture should be easy to understand. The ways it is very well organized, easier to find the files, and should be scalable. It should not be like that you are just putting anything everywhere. Most of the biggest example I can give, few developers prefer to write their CSS, their types inside a folder of the component. Few developers prefer to put it outside. And if they both developer working together and if they don't like to talk to each other, you will end up in a messed architecture. So it's very important to think about the architecture, which is easy to understand, easy to find the files and scalable. For example, this one, components, constant, context, mock, test, everything is there. Consistency. This is my favorite because I always tell at the end of the day, your code should look like that it is written by one person, not by 6 people of team. So it's very important to maintain consistency. If your code is not having consistency, I'm sorry, it is not scalable. You will end up with bugs. You won't be able to reuse. There would be a lot of mess. So think about consistency wherever you can see. By looking at your code, it should not look like, basically, I'm a senior developer. So if I know every team developer, I can point out, okay, this code must have written by this team member. This code must have written by this team member. It should not be like this. So think about consistency everywhere whenever you are writing the code. And the thing is, few of the points which I mentioned, they are not just React.js specific. You can implement it anywhere in any programming, whichever you want to use. So yeah, so one of the example is here. If you will see, this is the code from the same project. I will start with the function where the component name is starting with capital, but at the bottom it is all uppercase. Then the third line where we are writing the class name, there's a huge difference again. My-8, at the bottom it is my8. So consistency is missing. Even in constant also, if you will see on the top where we have span, you have footer.copyright without any hyphen or space. But in the header, you have copy hyphen writer. Now you can see that I can tell you the few bugs which will easily come just by looking at the constant, that developer end up with 2 copyrights. One is without space, without hyphen. Now what is happening is your bug will come, update your copyright. So the developer will go and just update one copyright because might be that maintenance developer doesn't know that there is another copyright there. So these are the small things, but they actually open a box of bugs. So these are the few things which I wanted to share with you, that how you can maintain or write or clean code and efficient code. So just to summarize, props, I didn't talk about test cases because we had a very awesome talk before the break. But yes, please follow TDD wherever you can. Fragment, single responsibility model, type checking, reusability state. I didn't talk about few of the points because otherwise this talk will go and go on. But there are others also which you can pull back, like configs, variables, hard coding, formatting, linting. There are comments. There are so many. So yeah, this is about my talk. Thank you. Thank you for having me.